Now more than ever, a serene bedroom is something we could all use, and something as simple as paint can really help create that feeling of warmth and relaxation. Sharon did just that when she tackled this large white room. Take a look.
Come take a look at this grand master suite. This is definitely the largest bedroom that I've ever decorated. And it's a great example of what a difference color can make. The walls were pale before, and they really weren't doing this room any justice. I'm so glad the homeowner is not afraid of color, so now we went with Payne's Gray. Very luxurious, and I brought that in to all of the finishes on the bed with velvets and textures and patterns, but then grounded it in this large space with an equally large antique blue-gray carpet. So it really grounds the space and adds all that beautiful texture. Now the space is large enough that it can really handle different zones. So we've got a nice lounge area where you can just sit and read by the fire. And we changed the color from the accent wall of Payne's Gray to intense white throughout the rest of the space. And on the ceiling we use simply white, but I really like how the three coordinate well. Now in the large area at the back, it's an open closet. How contemporary. Who needs doors?
Well, not when it's that beautiful. Sharon, that was gorgeous. And what a large space. So I like the way the wall color kind of changed for the different zones. That's nice.
We certainly know that color can make a huge difference in any space. When you're designing any space, whether it brings a lot of comfort or it brings a lot of personality, it can really do all of that. And more importantly, it can also be more strategic. So you can use color to demarcate different zones, to highlight certain areas like we did in that tape. So in that tape, I really called out that sleeping area, and I was able to cozy it up by using a much darker navy in that area, and then in contrast, bringing the paler gray into the sitting area and that lovely open closet.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So it's like the dark area, this is where you sleep. The light area, this is where you read. It was perfect. So now that you've knocked down the wall between your daughter's bedroom and the guest room, so excited for her, what's the paint plan?
I am going to take a different approach to color in this space, and I'm more than likely going to use one main color throughout the space. Now, don't worry. I promise you, Megan and I love color, so we are definitely going to highlight areas. And because she's so excited to have these different zones in this space, we're definitely going to use color to really define those areas.
Okay, so accent walls can be a little tricky. If you do an accent wall, how do you determine which one that should be, and how do you know where to start and where to stop the color?
The idea of an accent wall is to accent something. So you want to look around the space for architectural features that you want to highlight. So in a lot of cases, you might have a fireplace. So putting an accent color behind that might sort of bring more attention to that space. Or maybe you've got an open alcove that goes into another space, or just a little recessed niche. That's a great place to bring an accent color, or to just change colors, go darker, go lighter, you know, whatever you want to do. But one thing that I find really awesome is taking an art wall and making it even more bold and more dramatic by putting a strong color behind that. So there's lots of ways that you can sort of accent the architectural features, but you also want to think about accenting the functions like we did in that tape. So you might have a really open concept space and want to highlight the dining area and make that kind of stand out in an open concept space. Or maybe in a kid's room, you might want to separate the play area from the sleeping area with a couple of different colors. So there's lots of kind of fun ways that you can do that. But another thing is kind of the opposite of accent. If you want to camouflage something that's maybe less desirable in the space. I mean, we love TV, of course, Tracy, right? When Cityline's on, we're watching it. But when we're not watching TV, you kind of have that big black box on the wall. And sometimes it can just feel like a hole. So you can use color to camouflage that by using a darker color. And I think that's a really great tip for people too.
Yeah, that is a very good tip. And the other thing to keep in mind, and I think something that sort of tricks a lot of us, is just where to stop the color. So
in most cases, you don't want to have a long wall and just sort of stop the color and start a new color. It can be distracting, right? So follow those architectural cues for sure. So in a lot of cases you might have trim. In my case here in this room, I've got these little nib walls or bump out walls. So they would make a really great place to start and stop color. Now it can be a bit tricky as to where, but again, if you're maybe defining the spaces quite differently, you might have a darker color versus a lighter color. So my rule in this case is to kind of stop on the inside corner. It just looks a lot better when you stop on that plane, and then maybe bring the lighter color, wrap it around into the other room. As opposed to the outside corner, so if you start and stop a color like right there in the corner, your eye just tends to go to it all the time. So it can just really be distracting. So that's kind of my tip. But in a lot of cases, like in a living room, dining room, I've been in a lot of long homes where they're separated by trim. Maybe it's a nice arch, and you can actually get a really interesting flow from room to room when you have the trim separating those 3 or 4 or 5 different colors. So that's also a really great tip if you've got trim. And of course, you know what? Even if you have no exciting architectural features and it's just a plain old boxy room, an accent color can actually really bring some life into that space. And again, then you just want to sort of pick a wall. Now in this space, we've talked a lot about color, but I haven't really given away what we're doing in here. And that's simply because I have a lot of consulting still to do with my 14-year-old client.
Yes. You better consult with your client. I can't wait to see the final reveal, Sharon. I think it's going to be gorgeous. And we will, of course, be showing all of that good stuff right here on Cityline.